What's up, guys? It's Toad, as usual, back again. Another late night episode. It's football season, baby. This is the NFL Week 2 video. What's up, PS? Hopefully, I'm not making you wait too long. Hopefully, you're still in the chat there. We got 0 viewers, so you're not. But maybe it'll ramp up again once JC gets his crew in here, because he seems to just come in late at night. I guess he has nothing better to do each night. All right. We're talking to NFL here, although I guess I will briefly mention, didn't have a great day today. Looks like, I believe it went 2-2-1 today. I think 1-2-1 was my college football slate, and I was 1-0 on the baseball slate. Milwaukee Brewers got there. The college football experience today did not go very well. I think UAB was the only one that actually wound up covering, which rightly so. That game was like tied at halftime. I don't know if you saw that game, but one thing that did happen in that game is I think it was UAB's running back. He was running the football. Whoever it was had possession of the football on UAB. His helmet got knocked off, and Arkansas still decided to not only tackle the guy, but whoever tackled him, like, drilled him headfirst into the ground, and he had a concussion, some sort of head injury. You can't do that to the guy, man. I know it's football. I know it's a football play, but the dude's helmet comes off. I mean, I'm one for wanting these guys to be like gladiators and stuff, but that is definitely a safety concern. That shouldn't happen. Hopefully that guy's fine. I forget what the guy's name even is. I want to say Bruckheimer, but that's not right. Even though this guy might be a national treasure, that's a deep reference right there. I don't know. Oh, I'm on something. I'm on something tonight, man. Mr. Loki, because why not? I'm going to get more views by hijacking the TG account. I'm going live on both accounts tonight, baby. The Tower Gang folks are not going to know what hit them. We're going to be like, what the hell is this autistic bullshit? Well, this is better off dead, baby. We're talking NFL. Nate G, you did well. Hell yeah. Sounds good to me. Florida, Illinois. Yeah. Best team ever. Florida International, man. I don't even know what they did today. I think they played Florida Atlantic today, right? I don't know what happened in that game. I don't really care that much, but I'm here to talk NFL. So I guess let's do it. Why not? NFL week 2. I mean, week 2 in NFL, man, just like I said with college football last week, I tend to do the best in week 2 because it's overreaction week. Florida Atlantic rolled. Yeah, they are definitely better than Florida International. Than Florida, Illinois, even. They're a lot better than those guys, too. Week 2 tends to be overreaction week because you have 1 week of games. Basically, you just have 1 game to go by for every team. So everybody just massively overreacts to week 1, right? So that's what you have to look at in week 2. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm just going to be on the teams that look the worst because, of course, that would be the Giants. I do lean to the Giants side this week, but I don't think I can bring myself to actually do that. But, of course, everybody's just absolutely trashing the Giants, trashing Daniel Jones, saying the Giants are by far the worst team in football. And when you have that happening coming out of week 1 off of 1 game, or they had 1 bad game, and yes, it was against an injury-depleted Vikings team, even so, again, make yourself not overreact to what happened in week 1. And I think the Giants could very well win a game against the Washington Redskins. I mean, Washington's not that good, and they have a rookie quarterback playing his second game, so I do lean to the Giants in that one, but it's not strong enough to be a play for me. But you can see here in the market, Washington is down from -3 to -1 here with a lot of the public on them. 70% of the tickets and only 52% of the cash. Pretty strong market indicators actually there on the Giants side. So that is 1 game at least of interest, I guess I will point out there. Colts, Packers is also interesting. This is like an injured player theory spot, which is something I also talk about on the show quite a bit. The Packers, of course, are in a spot where Jordan Love, their star quarterback, got injured in the Brazil game, and they have a little bit of extra time off to try to recover from that too, which might actually help them a little bit. So I do kind of lean to the Packers side as it stands right now here. Not only because they have extra time off, which might help them because they lost that game in week 1 down in Brazil. So that extra time off should help them like refocus. But with Jordan Love being injured, you're going to get value in the line. That's the whole idea with the injured player theory. That first game that star player is out, the line tends to overreact to that star player being out. And what we see here is the Colts -3 is what it opened at, or -3 with juice, I guess. Now it's down to -2.5 with juice. Public is still all over the Colts, basically just because who are the Packers without Jordan Love, basically. 71% of the tickets on the Colts with 72% of the cash on them. But this line, I think, has just moved too far just to account for the Jordan Love injury. Like, are the Colts that much better than the Packers without Jordan Love, such that they're basically laying a field goal at Green Bay and Lambeau? And I know this is not cold weather Lambeau yet, but still, I don't buy it. I don't see it. The one advantage that I see the Colts may have is that the Packers' backup quarterback, who's going to be now starting, is Malik Willis, who was on Houston, and the Colts should know how to defend against him because they had to defend against him in their division. But the other issue I have with Willis, I guess, is that I don't think that he was on the Packers until, like, really recently, right? Like, I think Tennessee still had him and they traded him over or something like that. Or no, not Tennessee. Houston? I don't know. One of those two teams. I forget. Whichever team had him. Houston, I think, had him. Some team in the crappy AFC South had him. But I think he probably hasn't really had time to learn the Packers system yet. So that's kind of an issue as well as far as playing the Packers there. So I'm just going to stay off of that one. But it is kind of an interesting scenario there. And I do also lean to the Minnesota Vikings, who I just mentioned a little while ago. 49ers, I think, are kind of in a bad spot here. Laying 5. They're down to 4.5. Very public. 83% of the tickets and of the cash on the 49ers. Laying a road price here with the 49ers. I'm not convinced that the 49ers are going to continue to be that team that we saw last year who got to the Super Bowl. And there is the Super Bowl hangover effect. That is a real thing, and I did use that as part of my handicap in playing the Jets in week 1, and that did not work out for me. Oh, you guys are doing the end towers already? All right, better off dead end towers. That's what I get for going live on the Tower Gang channel. Hell yeah. So the 49ers, yeah, I mean, they looked good in week 1. Monday night, they beat me. They cost me some money on that one. But I think that this might be the week where the hangover effect comes in from the Super Bowl, man. Because, again, that is real. The loser of the Super Bowl tends to start a little bit slow in that next season. Even though the 49ers are a good team, it could happen this week. And I think they're in a sandwich spot because they're coming off a good performance in a big game where they played on Monday night in week 1. Beat the Jets. That's a big win just because it's the opening game. It's Monday Night Football. You tend to get up for that game. And it also means they have a short week. So they have one fewer day to prepare for this game. Or they have to go to Minnesota, play Sunday afternoon, and then upcoming next, they have to play their division rival, the LA Rams, next week, which is a big game. Rams 49ers is always a big game, and I am going to mention that in one of the games I'm actually playing. But I think that makes it a sandwich spot for the 49ers. I think they could just look past this Vikings team. The Vikings team without J.J. McCarthy. They got Sam Darnold, the quarterback, which I forgot who their quarterback even was last week, and that's who it is. Is he really actually any good? That remains to be seen. I mean, I think we've seen enough of him in the NFL that we can kind of say that he's not, but who knows? But I do like the Vikings getting the points in this one. And there is the added issue here where the 49ers, of course, surprisingly, in week 1, right at game time announced, oh, by the way, Christian McCaffrey is hurt. So I think they were pulling a Bill Belichick and kind of lying about the injury reports, which should get you fined or something like that as an organization because you're not supposed to do that in the NFL. But I think they did. They kind of falsified that injury report. They knew that Christian McCaffrey was not going to be playing. So I think that wound up being an injured player theory spot for the 49ers, which hurt me because I was expecting McCaffrey to be in there as part of my handicap. Although, of course, that's going to, jack the line up. Like, as soon as you realize, oh, McCaffrey's not in there, the line's going to move. And nobody realized that until game time. But they played that entire game without him. So I think that was the injured player theory game where the 49ers stepped up in lieu of McCaffrey not being there. And Mason, I think, was the guy who stepped in to fill the running back role. He had a really big game. But now I think that means that this week is going to be that, letdown spot. After you have that injured player theory spot and you play really well and you get up for that injured player, you tend to have a little bit of a backslide in that next game, a little bit of a letdown in that next game. So I think that is also a factor going against the 49ers here. One thing that I could see potentially maybe motivating the 49ers slightly and causing them to maybe not lose focus is that they did play at Minnesota last year. And if you remember that, they were coming off their first loss of the season where they had a bunch of guys get injured in that game against Cleveland. I think McCaffrey went down in that game, and they lost that game against Cleveland, which I actually won money on that one. Then they had to play on the road again the next week, and it was actually at Minnesota. And I think it was a primetime game. It was either Sunday night or Monday night. McCaffrey did come back in that game, but the Vikings did actually beat the 49ers in that game as a similar underdog. So will that cause the 49ers to be focused a little bit just because they remember that going to the Vikings last year and losing that in primetime? Maybe. So this one's not going to quite reach the status of like being a play for me, but I do like the Vikings side there getting the points. Oh man, you guys are going crazy in the chat there. Yeah, Redskins secondary is a prop target. Yeah, you could play some overs against that Redskins defense for sure. Play some guys over on their offensive stats there, even though I don't tend to like props over necessarily because obviously the public likes to play the overs, but there are certainly spots where you can play the overs, and I don't mind doing so against a very weak defense like that. And, well, this is the good spot to do it, right? Because you have a situation where everybody's shitting on Daniel Jones, thinking that he's the worst quarterback ever and whatever. Now he's up against this bad Washington defense. So I think you probably could actually get some value playing some overs with god-awful Daniel Jones there. So I actually do like that idea. Play some Jones passing yards over and stuff like that, man. Hell yeah, do it. And I usually talk about the primetime games as well. I'm going to have a play in the Monday night game. I do not have a play on the Sunday night game, so I will talk about that as well. Bears, Texans. Texans are up from 5 to 6, going through the 6 with juice. They're a fairly substantial favorite here. 90% of the tickets on them and only 83% of the cash. So the public is still buying into the Texans as well, buying into that hype that has sort of just continued from last season because why not? I mean, the Texans had a really good season from out of nowhere last year with C.J. Stroud coming from out of nowhere in his rookie season, playing really well. Their offense was just insane. They've added Stephon Diggs. So if anything, their offense looks like on paper it might even be better than last year. And they won against my favorite team, actually, the Colts, in week 1. So the Texans are just kind of continuing to do that. Yeah, Neighbors and Robinson. Yeah, that's what the Giants are going with as far as their wideouts there. But yeah, you can play those guys over as well. I don't know if they had great weeks 1 either, so I'm not sure. But Bears, Texans, this is an interesting one. I don't know how to read this game, actually, although the market read would tell you that the Texans are too public here and tell you to actually maybe side with the Bears here. And the one thing that would probably make me agree with that is that the Bears are the better defense. The Texans still are not a very good defensive team. They're laying a lot of points here. Bears, I don't think their offense is very good. I'm not impressed by Caleb Williams. His game, even though they won last week and they cost me money last week because the Titans actually cost me money by throwing the game away on offense, basically. But the Bears' defense is possibly one of the best defenses in football, but Caleb Williams and that offense, I think, is going to struggle pretty hard here. But the Bears' defense is good, so in that game, you are getting points with the better defense. So I could see leaning it to the Bears for that reason. And maybe the Bears realize that they kind of escaped in week 1 and probably should have lost that game. So maybe that'll focus the Bears a little bit. Whereas the Houston Texans are coming off winning in week 1, of course, against a division rival in the Colts. And I don't even know who Houston has up next. But if they have a big game up next, then I would probably agree with them more. They do not really. They have Minnesota up next. So it is not a sandwich spot. It does not qualify as a sandwich. But I could see it leaning to Chicago here. And the other thing I do in the NFL is I bring up the look-ahead lines. So the deal here is that basically in the NFL, you're always going to have lines come out for the next week's games. You're going to be able to see what are the lines in the upcoming weeks. So right now, before week 2, you can see all of the week 3 lines. I take them, I screenshot it, I write it down. I didn't do it for week 1 to week 2 here, but I found a website that has them. So this left-hand column was the line a week ago. So you can see how did the line move? This is to gauge, did the line overreact in the NFL, basically? So this is another tool that I like to use here where what was the line a week ago? And now, based off of 1 week's results, did that line move way too much and overreact? And you can see one of the biggest moves was actually that Bears-Texans game where the line a week ago was Texans -3 in that game, and now it's -6. So what gives? Why, after just one result like that, where the Bears actually won the game, even though they looked like ass in doing it and they shouldn't have won, what justifies this line moving from 3 to 6? And maybe you could argue that maybe the 3 was too low because that's basically saying that these teams are about even, where I'm not sure I agree with that. I think the Texans probably are the slightly better team, but the line has moved so much that you can kind of see that that was a bit of an overreaction there, man, I would have to say. So I do think that the Bears probably would be the lean in that one. How did I become a Colts fan? I root for all of the Boston teams. The Patriots, I used to root for under the Bill Parcells, Drew Bledsoe, Curtis Martin era. And then as soon as they got Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, my gauge of character, I like to think, is pretty good, especially for an autist. Hated both of those guys right away. Fuck them. I'm not rooting for these guys. They're huge assholes, huge tools. And I think I wound up being justified in that, even though they won a bunch of Super Bowls. They were probably the biggest cheating regime in professional sports history. Fuck them. So I do not like them. And the reason why I was rooting for the Colts over that time period was because they had Peyton Manning, my favorite quarterback of all time. Basically because he was like the anti-Brady in many ways, where he was actually legitimately funny and actually a more likable character than Tom Brady was. And I thought he was getting shortchanged, basically. Like, that dude had an excellent arm, and he just didn't win as many Super Bowls and whatever, so he got knocked for that. But that's why I started rooting for the Colts. I mean, there are some other teams that I don't really mind either. I was actually a Titans fan for a while back in the day, too, because I liked Steve McNair and Eddie George and Jeff Fisher there. So I did like the Titans, even though I know they're a division rival of the Colts as well. I'm weird, all right? But I'm still a Bostonian. I still fucking root for all the Boston teams, kid. I root for the Celtics, the Bruins, and the Sox. I root for all of them. All right. Back to this slate here. I guess I will also talk about Bengals Chiefs, because this is probably this is one of the biggest games on the board, really. And it got slated in the 4:25 p.m. slate Eastern. But this is maybe arguably the biggest game on the board, because this has become a rivalry, man. Everybody knows Joe Burrow on the Bengals. He wins against the Chiefs, basically, is the thing. He knows how to go into Kansas City. Since he's been a rookie, he's done quite well at Kansas City. And it was like the Chiefs couldn't get over that hump until I think last year. Maybe they finally did. But Joe Burrow got injured, of course, towards the end of last year or whatever, and the Bengals wound up being without him. They failed to make the playoffs, but now he is back. So you do have the Joe Burrow factor coming in this game. There are a lot of interesting factors in this game, really. Chiefs sitting at a 6-point favorite here. I think the look ahead was 4.5. So the line has gone up a bit on the Chiefs. 79% of the tickets and 80% of the cash on the Chiefs. So the Chiefs are public. I don't know if that 1% cash discrepancy there is really something to buy into at all. I don't know if I actually would want to do anything with the Chiefs here, as public as they are. The Chiefs, they're coming off a big win, man. They beat Baltimore again on Thursday night in the opening week. That was a big game, primetime game. And I think when you win that game, the extra time off actually doesn't help you. So I think it'll help the Ravens try to recollect themselves. And the Ravens are playing the lowly Raiders, so whatever. But I think as far as the Chiefs are concerned, because they won that game, I think they could be kind of just feeling a bit high for a prolonged period of time. And that tends to be a negative when you're coming off a big win like that and you have that extra time off. The extra time off helps a lot more if you played poorly in the game going into that extra time off. Whereas for the Chiefs, that was not the case, of course. They won the game. Now they get Cincinnati. I mean, that is a big game. I don't think the Chiefs are going to overlook them, especially with Joe Burrow's track record against them, where he has gone into Kansas City and beaten them, I think, at least twice over the last few years. So I don't think it's going to be a game where either team overlooks them. Kansas City, they don't have anything big upcoming either, so no real look ahead here. Atlanta, no. So Kansas City probably should still be focused on this game, but maybe suffering from a little bit of that hangover effect from the extra time off, of course. Whereas Cincinnati, I think they're going to be in a pissed off mood, man, because in their opening game at home, they lost the New England Patriots as a 9.5-point favorite or whatever it was. crushing a bunch of survivors in their survivor pool. Luckily, I avoided that one. I was not on the Bengals in week 1 in survivor pools. Thankfully, I had Seattle. Got that nice escape there in week 1. Well, Seattle didn't really escape. They were up 2 touchdowns late, so the win was in the bag pretty much at that point, even though it got a little bit dicey with that Bo Nix rushing touchdown, but whatever. Cincinnati, I think they're going to be a little bit extra motivated because they played so badly in that game, and I think the reason why the line has moved up, I guess maybe part of it is because Kansas City's passing offense looks a little bit better with Rice there, and they got Worthy, who looks like he is worthy of being a starting wide receiver on an NFL team, and he is on one of my fantasy teams, my main fantasy team. So, nice draft pick up by me there, I guess. Nice draft pick there. Kansas City's offense does look like it may be better than it was last year from a passing perspective because they've filled some of those wide receiver roles better than they had last year. But, so I think that might be some of the reason why the line has moved up on Kansas City from where the opener was. I think the main reason, though, is that Cincinnati looked terrible in week 1. So, kind of lean to Cincinnati plus the points there, but again, that's not going to be a play for me. And you can see what my plays are if you're going to zoom in here and microscopic there. Use a microscope and just zoom in and look at those tabs that I have there. You're going to know what I'm going to play. I'll get into it right now, and then I'll talk about the Monday night game because it is one of my games. First game up. I mean, how ugly can I get with this? I'm going to take the Cleveland Browns +3 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. How about that? Starting it off nice and ugly. Not as ugly as the Giants play would be, but almost as ugly. And this line, I think the look ahead on this was Jacksonville -1 or 2. So this line has gone up a little bit for no reason really other than what happened in week 1. I think it's a bad spot for Jacksonville, dude. So Jacksonville, they're coming off a big game at Miami where they had a lead 17-7 fairly late in that game against Miami, and they wound up losing the game. Big game against Miami. Miami, certainly a contender in the AFC. Jacksonville considers themselves to be a contender until we see that might not be the case. I do think it actually is the case. I think Jacksonville's good. I think that towards the end of last season, they were just struggling because Trevor Lawrence was playing with like a still injured collarbone, and I think it was obviously affecting him. So I do expect Jacksonville to be a little bit better, and they did look good in week 1. I liked them to cover in week 1, which they did. Didn't play the game, but it was close to being a play for me. But now coming off that big game, even though, yeah, this is their home opener, they're playing the Cleveland Browns, man. I mean, I know the Cleveland Browns made the playoffs last year, but they've very quickly turned into a laughingstock again because they had that just horrendous Joe Flacco game against Houston in the playoffs last year. Everybody remembers that. Now all of a sudden, Cleveland sucks. And then people start hyping them up a little bit again. Oh, Cleveland might actually be good coming into this season. Oh, nope. They just got absolutely annihilated by the Dallas Cowboys. Cleveland sucks. So it's just Cleveland sucks over and over again. Cleveland, I mean, I think aside from the Giants and the Panthers coming out of week 1, Cleveland may have been the biggest laughingstock coming out of week 1 besides those two teams. Cleveland just did not look good at all at home. But I like Cleveland to bounce back from that, man. Again, don't overreact to what happened in week 1. Jacksonville played a tougher game, put in a bit more of an effort there because Cleveland, their game was over like so quickly. They were not putting in a big effort wire to wire, whereas Jacksonville had to do that because that game went right to the wire against Miami. Cleveland was already able to like basically pack it in, even though I know they scored that garbage time touchdown for Ford that helped some people out in fantasy and whatever. Cleveland is without Nick Chubb, but this is a plug-and-play running back league for the most part, man. Ford is fine in there. Like, I don't think they're missing that much with Chubb gone. He's been injured so much that they're used to playing without Chubb. I don't care. The real question mark is Deshaun Watson. I know I'm playing on Cleveland, even though we have that giant question mark with Watson there, where everybody's talking about, oh, he's got these, like, sexual assault allegations that are coming up again. Like, oh, it seems like it was something worse than just, like, demanding happy ending massages and whatever. I don't know, man. Is that going to be a distraction? I don't know. I think it might be overstated, man, because when this is the NFL and when you're coming off such a bad loss like that, I do think that you're going to find a way to refocus and play in this game. And you're playing against a decent Jacksonville Jaguars team. So I am going to be expecting Cleveland to play a better game here. And Jacksonville, look at what they have up next, man. Buffalo, Houston, and then, I mean, Indy. I don't know if they're considering that to be a big game, but Buffalo is definitely a big game. That's up next. I think this is a sandwich spot for Jacksonville. because they have this game sandwiched in between two of the top teams in the AFC, basically. So I think they could overlook Cleveland in this spot, especially given what happened in week 1. But the other thing I like about this is that this is a game of the low total, and we're taking the points in this one. You know I like to do that. When you have a game of the low total like this, it's actually dropped from 44 down to 41. So the line looks like it's moved down a bit. You get a bit of a low total there. The points are worth a little bit more there. So getting those points in what's expected to be kind of a defensive game. I think both of these teams have good defenses. The Browns' defense isn't all of a sudden just going to be terrible, and they have a lot of the same components that they had last year. I think it should continue to be good like it was last year. So I think this might be the week where we see that again, and the Browns' defense puts in a good performance. It shows up, and they keep this game close. That's what I'm expecting here, a more defensive kind of slugfest here with Jacksonville in the worst spot, the sandwich spot. Browns coming off a totally embarrassing loss. Let's put aside the Deshaun Watson distractions and take the Cleveland Browns, baby. It doesn't get uglier than that. It gets actually less ugly from here on out, because one of my other plays, which is my favorite play of the week, is the Arizona Cardinals. I'm playing the Cardinals here. This line was, I believe, the look ahead was Rams -1 on this, and then after what happened in week 1, the Rams went up to 2.5. And now we're not getting the 2.5, unfortunately. I missed the 2.5, and it's kind of slid back down. But it looks like it had slipped all the way to Cardinals being favored -1 a couple days ago. And I was like, well, I don't know. The Rams are probably going to be public, so I can wait a little bit. Maybe it's close to pick them, and we'll see if it kind of goes back in the other direction. It looks like it actually is, with the Rams kind of teetering on maybe being a -1 again. I have this listed as Arizona pick'em right now, but you may be able to get like a +1 on Arizona again. Either way, it doesn't really matter. You're still basically just picking them to win the game in this scenario. I think the Rams might be in the worst spot on the board, man. I like the Cardinals here. 75% of the tickets are on the Rams. The Rams are going to be public. Everybody knows the Rams are the better of these two teams, and the odds makers are telling you they are. Which, by the way, the odds makers are telling you, I forgot to mention, the odds makers are telling you the Giants are the better team over Washington. Just throwing that out there, because Washington's not even getting the full home field advantage there. So the odds makers are telling you something there. Hint, the Giants actually are not the worst team in football, according to the odds makers. As much as the talking heads and the football fans are going to say that they are, it's just not actually true. As much as they suck as well, they may be like the third or fourth worst team in football. Back to Rams-Cardinals, though. This line's telling you the Rams are the better team, but we all know this. But this is at Arizona, man. It's their home opener, and I know that the Rams have dominated this series against the Cardinals recently, but at some point, man, the Cardinals, it's got to motivate the Cardinals a little bit, because they keep losing to this Rams team, and the Rams know that they have the Cardinals' number to such a degree that it's got to be like the Rams at some point have got to just kind of like lose focus a little bit when it's this Cardinals team that they just constantly beat. And of course, you got to remember that a lot of that was the Cardinals under Cliff Kingsbury. That was his name, right? He was not a good head coach, man. He's back in a coordinator position, I'm pretty sure, which is where he belongs. Cardinals have a new coaching regime here. I think it's going to be a little bit different this time out. And the Rams are in a terrible spot. And as I was about to say, the market is indicating against the Rams here. As you can see, you have public on the Rams to a really high percentage here, but less of the cash to a pretty decent degree there. So that's one of those spots where you have a public road team there with less of the cash than the tickets on them. That's a nice market indicator there. But look at the scheduling spot, man, for the Rams here. This is not a good spot for the Rams. As I was saying, they played on Sunday nights. They're coming off a big primetime game, which was revenge for the playoff loss that they had last year at Detroit. They got to go back to Detroit, back to the scene of the crime right away, and they were down multiple touchdowns in that game. They made a huge comeback. They took the lead in the fourth quarter, and then Detroit tied it, sent it into overtime, and had an excellent overtime drive and won with a touchdown in overtime. That is a brutal, brutal loss for the Rams, dude. You get way high up emotionally for that game. It's revenge time. You can get revenge against the team, avenge yourselves against the team that ended your season last year in the playoffs, the Detroit Lions. You get so close to doing it, and you fall that short, and now you have to play a second straight road game in the heat of Arizona, and you have the San Francisco 49ers up next, which is a giant, giant game there. Not the San Francisco Giants. The San Francisco 49ers, that is a huge game, dude. 49ers, everybody knows, I mean, they're still one of the better teams in football, one of the best, really. They're still a force in the NFC. That's a huge game for the Rams. The Rams could easily look ahead to that. The way that they dominate the series against Arizona, they could easily just look right past Arizona in a spot like this. This is a difficult spot, man. And even the Heat maybe will get to them, even though I know the Rams play in LA, but they do play in like a roofed stadium, so it's a little bit more comfortable than maybe playing in well, Arizona has a roofed stadium too, so what am I saying? But Arizona should open the roof, man. They should bring that desert heat in and try to throw off their opponents as much as possible. Who knows? But even if you don't factor that in, the spot is really bad for the Rams. Big time sandwich spot. And I do know that Arizona is coming off a close call of their own where they went up to Buffalo and they were almost able to beat Buffalo. They had the lead in that game against Buffalo for a while. Yeah, I mean, you can consider that to be a big game, but it is an out-of-conference road game, too, so teams don't consider those to be as big, really. So Arizona, I don't think they're going to, lapse in focus. I don't think they're going to have a hangover after this, even though, yeah, they had a pretty nice-sized lead in this game and then wound up blowing it, and then everybody kind of remembers right at the end of the game, they had Marvin Harrison Jr., who did nothing in this game. They had him wide open for, it would have been an easy touchdown that would have potentially won them the game near the end. And Kyler Murray was I think he must have been under so much pressure or just looking to run the ball first that he somehow didn't see Marvin Harrison out there and just didn't make the play at all. Didn't even try to throw it to him. I don't know what that was because there was nobody within 20 yards probably of Marvin Harrison Jr. on that play. It was like he was so open that maybe even that was why he didn't see him, because it's like, how could a guy be that open? You just assume he's not even there because nobody could possibly be that open. I don't know. Cardinals lost that game, but I don't think they're going to suffer from a lapse in focus or hangover spot, man. This is a divisional game where they're playing against the Rams, who, as I mentioned, the Rams just beat them up constantly. So the Cardinals are going to have this almost like little brother effect here where they're going to be focused and the Rams are coming into their house. So I'm taking the Arizona Cardinals in that one. And then we're going to Monday night. Gambling addict. What? Yeah, that's Tower game. We have a no white women policy, all right? Maybe we'll get Angela Bel Camino to come on. Oh yeah, Watson definitely should be doing OnlyFans. Yeah, he could do the Dawn Copter. Yeah, he's probably got a big one, right? He's black. I mean, he's got to have a big one. And he probably it also is one that terrifies the masseuses, which is probably part of the reason why they're coming after him so much. They're probably terrified by the size of that thing. The gambling addict or fag comment, I don't even know what you're talking about, man. Which, I don't know, whichever. I'm both. Monday night, I'm taking the Atlanta Falcons +6 on Monday night against the Philadelphia Eagles. This is going to be a weird one, and I'll get it out of the way right away. Yes, I know this means I am playing on Kirk Cousins in primetime. Cousins is the Falcons quarterback now, and he notoriously does terrible in primetime games. I know. We all know. We know to such a degree that it's probably being factored into the line, okay? So something's being factored into the line here because this line has moved a lot from the look ahead. This is the biggest line move from the look ahead of the entire week, so I think you're only getting value on the Falcons in this one. There's no reason for the line to have moved as much as it has in this battle of the birds. So primetime Kirk Cousins, you don't need him to win the game here. You just need him to come within 6 points. So let's do it. Let's get it done. And we all know that the Eagles, when they were winning games last year, yeah, they won 10 of their first 11 games or whatever. And yeah, they were a good team. And when they played horribly down the stretch, they were underperforming. I think they were overperforming for those first 11 games. Then they were underperforming for the other games to the point where the reality was probably somewhere in between the two. But it is still the case that in those 10 wins they had in that first half of the season, I think a huge amount of them were by one score. So if you're taking a team to come within one touchdown, basically, of the Eagles, I think that's also a good play to be making because the Eagles win so many games by one score. And guess what? They just did it again in week 1. They won by one score, and I won on the game because I had Eagles -2 or whatever. They only won the game by 5, so that game was within one score too. The Eagles are just constantly winning close games, so that makes me like the Falcons as well. We can look at the market read here for Monday night. Eagles are up from 4.5 to 6.5. Like I said, this line is getting to the point where it's, I think, too high for sure. It's getting a little bit out of control. 88% of the tickets and 88% of the cash as well. So the public is back on the Eagles hype train, man. Again, reacting to what they saw in week one. And I don't agree with that hype. This line, like I said, it's moved a lot. It was 3.5 on the look ahead. So before week one's games were played, this line was 3.5. Now it's up to 6.5. I mean, come on, man. It's gone up 3 points. So I guess it's this and the Bears Texans. Those are the two biggest line moves off of the look aheads. And it's just, that has to be indicating that you're getting value on the other side, because what did we see? We've seen one game out of these teams so far. Philadelphia, as we know, they beat the Green Bay Packers in Brazil. And that's a big game, man. I mean, that's a weird game, having to go to Brazil. It's a primetime game. It was Friday night. Everybody was watching it. So I think that sets up kind of a bad spot for the Eagles here, because they're having to travel back from Brazil. And yes, they have a little bit of extra time off to do that because they played on Friday. But again, they won the game against Green Bay. So I think that extra time off is actually kind of a negative, because you're kind of just like listening to like the media and stuff hype you up because you had a good opening game. You played well. So that can get you a little bit overconfident coming into this game. And if that's not going to make you overconfident, how Atlanta played in week one probably should, right? Because Atlanta notoriously lost horribly to Pittsburgh at home in week one. Pittsburgh was able to beat them scoring no touchdowns. Pittsburgh only scored 6 field goals in this game, no touchdowns, and they beat Atlanta 18-10. So Atlanta is also one of the teams everybody's making fun of. Like, how can you lose to a bad Pittsburgh Steelers team, to Justin Fields, by the way? Russell Wilson, I think, was supposed to start, and I think he either didn't start or he was out of there immediately. And Justin Fields, I think he got hurt, I think. I think it was Mike Tomlin being like, okay, we've seen enough of this guy. Nope, give him the hook. It's the Gong Show. Pull him out of there. He's injured, guys. Russell Wilson is injured. He's got shittiness. That's his injury, basically. Shitty old age. He's gone. Justin Fields is in, who I also don't think is good at all, but he was able to lead them to victory through all field goals in that game. It was Chris Boswell's leg was what did it there. So Atlanta, I mean, that was just a laughable game for Atlanta there. So I think they're in a position where they're going to be in a bit of an angry mood. They're going to bounce back. They get to leave home, so they don't have to hear all their fans shitting on them again. Oh, here we go again with the Falcons. Nope. Get out on the road. Go play the Eagles. You know, I think it's going to focus you, and it's an ESPN primetime game, so it's Monday night. I mean, so yeah, sure, it's Monday night, so the Eagles probably should be focused as well. Both teams should be focused, but again, the Eagles could be just getting a little bit overconfident, flying a little bit too high off of that big Brazil win, whereas Atlanta's going to be the team that's got to be way more pissed off here coming off of that game. So I like the Atlanta side in that one. I don't know if Philly would be considered to have a look ahead in this game, looking ahead to New Orleans. Probably not, even though New Orleans dominated in week one. It was against the Carolina Panthers. I mean, I'm not going to take much away from that. Again, we don't want to overreact here, but I think this is just too many points to be getting with Atlanta. And say what you will about what Atlanta did in that week one. One thing that we do know is that Atlanta does actually have a pretty good defense, okay? So that the defense still showed up in week one, and they did their job. And I think that's going to be able to hold Philadelphia's offense in check. I don't expect Philadelphia to score as easily as they did against Green Bay. I think Green Bay's defense isn't as good, but if you watch that Brazil game, that was a weird, messed up field, man, where the surface was kind of just churned up, and it was really slick, and it was affecting the defense. So when you have a slick surface like that, and some of this comes into play with like snow games and stuff like that too, even though the snow, of course, affects your visibility, so it will still limit your offense. But when it's just like a slick surface, I think it actually helps the offense, because it's the offensive player who has the ball and he knows where he's going, and the defense has to react to it. So if the surface is slick, the defense can't react as quickly because they try to react and then they slip on the turf and whatever. And that was happening in that Brazil game if you didn't watch it. Like, that's part of the reason why Saquon Barkley dominated to such a degree. Everybody said, oh, Saquon Barkley's totally back, man, after the Giants cursed him, basically, and he was injured all the time with the Giants. I mean, yeah, he was. I think he's going to do better as long as he stays healthy, but I don't think he's as good as what he looked like in week one. I think some of that was the playing surface that these guys were on. The defense was just slipping around, and they couldn't do anything about that. So I do expect the Eagles' offense to not look as good as they did in week one here, and they're playing up against a better defense as well in the Atlanta Falcons. People tend to overlook this Falcons defense, but the Falcons defense is pretty good. And their offense, even though, yeah, it's primetime Kirk Cousins, whatever, Cousins is still he is still an experienced quarterback, and he does have some winning under his belt. I mean, 2 seasons ago, he led, the Vikings to like a 13-3 record or something. So he does still know how to win games in the regular season. He does have some weapons around him. I mean, this Atlanta team, they got Bijan Robinson. Is that his name? Really good running back. One of the top running backs in football. They got Drake London. Is that the wide receiver's name? I forget everybody's name. But yeah, they do have some weapons around Kirk Cousins, man. And Kyle Pitts, target there as the tight end there. So this offense is not like an anemic offense. I know they didn't look good in week 1, but I expect them to bounce back a little bit. And their offense, I think, is decent enough that combined with their defensive play, I think they should be able to kind of hang around in this game. So I like the Falcons in the Monday night game +6. And I think that's going to be it, man. That's going to do it for me. Yeah, Bel Camino. Yeah, she's the bold lib. We're getting all bold here. All right, man. I mean, hopefully you liked this NFL Week 2 video here. I'm doing it on the Tower Gang channel. I know I'm discombobulated. It's late. I'm all over the place. Hopefully you get some good information about that. If you want to ask me about these games or some of the games I didn't really talk about or whatever, feel free. If you guys are in the Tower Gang Patreon and the Telegram, you can ask me there or just, talk to me on Twitter or whatever, and I'll try to respond to that, give out some other information. But once again, those plays that I have in week 2, overreaction week. We're not overreacting here. Cleveland +3, Arizona, pick 'em. You might be able to get +1 if you wait a little bit. Who knows? Atlanta Falcons +6. That's going to do it for me, man. I'm Tower Gang Toad. I'll be back in the morning because I have to break down tomorrow's baseball card, and that's what I do in the morning. So I'll be back on the Monday. Holy crap. I'll be back with a Sunday video where I break down the baseball card before this football card kicks off. So peace out, man. Follow me. I'm Tower Gang Toad on Twitter. Of course, follow the Tower Gang podcast. I mean, you're following us right now on this YouTube channel, of course. Sign up for the Patreon, patreon.com/Tower Gang. Throw us some support there, and you'll get extra content. We do pre-shows, post-shows that are both live, just extra content from us, and you get to hang out with us in the Telegram. And I think you might maybe potentially have like some access to some like Top Lobster merch and stuff like that as well. Whatever. Support Top Lobster as well, toplobster.com. Buy some of that Tower Gang merch over there. We need some Better Off Dead merch maybe. How about that? But yeah, that's I think that's it, man. I always give a shout out to flapper.net as well because they shout me out on their blog. They are political shit posters as well. They have like a YouTube channel where they do political history in kind of a shit posty way. They talk about women and they talk about sports as well. So they overlap with me on all of our areas of interest. That's it for me, man. Have a good night. It's fucking late, baby. It's Sunday morning already. Let's go to church. We'll go to church before we gamble, before we do our sinning. We'll pre-confess. Peace out. Although I'm not Catholic either. Peace out.